Over the last few days, there's been two interesting elections, one in Moldova and one in Cuba. In Moldova, it's a parliamentary election, the election of a new parliament and a new prime minister. And in Cuba, it's a referendum for a new constitution that they will adopt. Both have gone through now and their results are back. Let's start with Cuba first. The constitution written by the National Assembly has been accepted by the people in a popular referendum of about 87% to 13%. This new referendum seems to me to be not a liberalization of the system, but mere window dressing. So it seems on paper to give more power away from the Communist Party and the General Secretariat into the de jure actual systems and organs of power of the country, so the Prime Minister and the Presidency. But it doesn't introduce new political parties or any way for new political parties to be formed. The Communist Party of Cuba maintains its sole monopoly over political parties. And which is interesting is that China and North Korea do not have monopolies. They have fake or controlled opposition parties. Cuba doesn't. Every single person in their parliament and every single part of their state system has to be a member of the Communist Party. And it doesn't seem to reform any of this at all. That being said, it also seems to have a pretty huge change towards their judicial pattern and their judicial system to intimate the international concept of the rule of law. Now, will these be substantial changes to give Cubans more individual rights? We don't know. We'll have to see. The other thing is it recognizes private property, and it wants to have more foreign investment in Cuba. So my understanding is this new constitution works in two ways. One, to bolster Cuban power in an attempt, especially with the pressure that's going on in Venezuela right now, to overthrow socialism in the 21st century and all that. And you know, the two presidents dueling and all that jazz. And China and Russia and the US and EU supporting different people. And Latin America lighting up with support for which president. So Cuba right now is trying to give support within itself to justify its own system by having this referendum. And by having a supermajority approve at 87%, looks so that the communist system has wide approval in Cuba. At the same time, they're trying to mainstream their system into the global framework by allowing more private property and more foreign investment, as well as streamlining their judicial system to reflect the liberal consensus worldwide on judicial systems. Now, will this lead to kind of like a perestroika or glasnost kind of collapse of the Cuban system? No, I don't think so, because Cuba doesn't have a secession crisis. Raul Castro has his hand-picked successor, and Miguel Diaz-Canel, who's its current president and will likely become General Secretary of Cuba and the actual ruler of Cuba. That being said, Cuba is moving towards homosexuality and the improvement of gay marriage here. Canel supports gay marriage, unique in Marxist-Leninist states, or at least the ones that currently exist now. And part of the referendum is opening way for gay marriage, so eliminating the requirement that marriage be between one man and one woman. This means that the Communist Party of Cuba will be able to fight the Catholic Church, but be popular for it internationally because it will receive the help of the global homo agenda. It also looks like it's removing all these gender-based and racial-based discrimination, so it'll be interesting how that goes for transsexuality and the transsexual movement worldwide in supporting Cuba. This constitution serves two purposes. It bolsters the legitimacy of the Cuban state in the midst of its crisis in Venezuela towards people saying that people support the Communist Party and the communist rule in Cuba and the system in Cuba. Despite the chaos that's going in Venezuela, it bolsters the system. And secondly, it helps Cuba become part of the international community more fully by allowing greater international investment while maintaining the single-party rule. Now the question is, can Cuba maintain the single-party system of the Communist Party in the midst of the neoliberal world economy? The answer, I think, is yes, because the forces that be don't really want to snap Cuba in half. Cuba's not this big cultural magnet that, say, the Soviet Union was, or even China is. Cuba's this very peripheral state, and Cuba is going to accept within this referendum the global homo agenda of homosexuality and possibly transsexuality. So Cuba will not be overthrown. It is not a target for annihilation. And it will likely continue at least until Canel's death if he has not chosen a good successor. Now let's go to Moldova, the base country at an awkward crossroads. Resolutely socially conservative, yet deeply anti-neoliberal, landlocked, surrounded by Romania to its west and Ukraine to its east, terrified of Romanian irredentism, and split in two by Russophone Transnistrian separatists. Moldova is a land of contradictions, so its parliamentary election, to no surprise, is deeply interesting. Okay, so the Nazbol Party, or the PSRM, or the Party of Socialists of the Republic of Moldova, comes in first place. They're kind of pro-Russia. The second place party that comes in is a Social Democratic, pro-European Union party. Obviously the party I'm not supporting, the Democratic Party of Moldova. They're coming in second place. And now you have both sides accusing each other of election fraud. And how does this happen? Well, the president is part of the Nazbol Party, and the previous sitting prime minister is part of the liberal pro-European party. That being said, the Nazbol Party, despite winning first place and gaining a lot of seats, doesn't have the ability to form a government, and it doesn't have enough supporting parties to probably help it form a government. A lot of commenters are saying right now that there's going to be another snap election. So we'll see how that goes. The thing with Moldova is Romania, right, with the neoliberal world order and NATO and everything, can't really annex Moldova. So why do they support Russia? Because the EU would help them economically. Well, it wouldn't really help them economically. Because is the EU really going to want to annex Moldova? No, not really. They just want to use Moldova for cheap labor and to dump their products inside of. Moldova's not going to get the economic benefits of joining the EU, at least for a couple of decades. That expansion that Romania and Hungary and Poland were a part of isn't going to come towards Moldova for a few decades. Will the EU exist until then? Probably not. So why would they go to Russia? Russia has troops in Transnistria, the unrecognized republic filled with Russo and Ukrainophones. It would seem to them Russia would be their aggressor. But in Moldova, they want to be, at least a large plurality, if not a majority, of Moldovans want to be aligned with Russia and want to join the Eurasian economic system that Russia is building. If they can get around being surrounded by two quasi-hostile powers or openly hostile powers to that economic system, well, that will be good for them because they'll be able to be sovereign. They'll probably end the Transnistria thing, all the problems that come with that, and they'll get the economic benefits of trading gas and oil with Russia. So it would not be as economically advantageous as the European Union partnership, but it would be more advantageous for staying where they are, and they would be able to maintain sovereignty. And down the road, if the European Union collapses, right, they don't have to be worried about Ukrainian irredentism because Russia has troops within Moldova, probably not necessarily pointed towards Romania, pointed towards Ukraine, but they'll be there just in case. So Romania can't just invade them and annex them if they want to, or force them the Auschwitz. And furthermore, a bunch of Moldovans are really, really, really nostalgic for the Soviet Union. I mean, their economy probably hasn't even recovered to what it was under Gorbachev, let alone before him. So they're in a huge economic recession, they don't have very many economic options, and they want to keep sovereignty. So they choose Russia. There's going to be a snap election. So in the snap election, as I was before, I stand with you, the Party of Socialists in the Republic of Macedonia. And good luck to you. Hail Nazbol!